This is one of history's most famous betrayals, and it was all for power. The year is 211 AD. Emperor Septimius Severus has died after ruling over the Roman Empire for 14 years. And now, his two boys are set to inherit the greatest power in the world. Now, normally, that would be cause for celebration. A new era of peace and prosperity could be dawning upon the empire. But this isn't a normal family. This is a family of snakes. These two boys have been at each other's throats since they were old enough to walk. They despise each other. So you can imagine how this transition of power went. Yeah, about as well as you would expect. We'll tell you what happened next. But first, if you wouldn't mind clicking the like button, we would appreciate it. If you want more videos like this, you know what else really helps us out? Comments. So drop us a comment and let us know what you thought about the intro. Was it too fast? Too dramatic? Just right? We're always trying to improve. Thanks for helping us out. It's Rome 211 AD and Septimius has kicked the bucket. This emperor tried to do things differently by sharing power with his favorite two people in the world, his wife and his two boys. At first it seemed like a good idea. The boys were half-brothers Caracalla and Geta. Their mom, Julia Misa, was empress. Their dad was the emperor. So naturally, when Septimius died, both of them became emperor, sort of. They ruled jointly, although their mom did most of the work. But Rome is not a place for brothers. Rome is a place for emperors, and emperors don't share. And these two hated each other. As soon as Septimius died, they started fighting. Soon, the entire imperial court was split into two camps, Team Caracalla and Team Geta. And as you might expect, there was a lot of bloodshed. Servants were picked up for being loyal to the wrong brother. Soldiers were slain for refusing to fight for one of the senators who supported one brother were beheaded for treason by the other. One gladiator was even sentenced to death by chariot. That's right, the condemned was forced to run alongside a chariot. When the horses pulled him down, another gladiator took his place. And this went on until the charioteer got bored, swerved, and ran the driver right over. And all the while, these two emperors acted like children. They threw tantrums, they insulted each other, they screamed. It was embarrassing for everyone involved. And honestly, this embarrassment is what finally made their mom step in. She organized a meeting between the two. She demanded an end to the bloodshed and a return to peace. But she had no way of knowing that her boys weren't ready for peace. The meeting was held in the palace of Maecenas, and Julia Misa invited the top members of the Senate. She arranged for her two boys to enter separately, and then she hoped for a reconciliation. It wasn't exactly part of the plan, but when the doors opened, both brothers entered together. This caused quite a stir among the senators, and when they saw the hatred on each other's faces, they knew something was off. Soon after, the brothers entered their mother's throne room. But this wasn't your typical mother-son meeting. This was high stakes. The fate of an empire rested on what happened next. But it only lasted a few seconds, because as soon as Caracalla entered the room, he drew a dagger and charged his brother. Everyone gasped, jumped out of their seats. What was happening here? Hadn't they come for peace? But before anyone could react, Caracalla had already plunged his dagger deep into Geta's chest. Geta stumbled back, surprised, shocked. His hand flew to his chest, but the dagger had gone too deep. Blood bubbled out of his mouth. He collapsed on the ground, dying. And as the senators watched in horror, Caracalla ripped the dagger out of his brother's chest and shouted, "Why did you look at me?" And then he lunged again, stabbing his brother again, and again, and again. But it gets worse. While this was happening, their mother, Julia Misa, stood there in horror. She screamed. She cried. She tried to protect her youngest son, but she couldn't. And by the time it was over, she was covered head to toe in blood. It was a massacre. Caracalla was frenzied, wild with power, and he wasn't done. In the end, 16 senators would die during the coup. Some by the sword, some by treachery, but most by Caracalla's own hand. He was like a man possessed, and his rage knew no bounds. After killing his brother, he turned his attention to the senators. Those who hadn't already fled for their lives were executed, their heads rolling across the palace floor. To make matters worse, Caracalla wasn't done with his brother's legacy yet. He wanted to erase it completely. So he ordered every statue of Geta to be torn down, every coin to be melted, every record to be destroyed. Even his name was taken off the calendar. For centuries, historians argued about what happened to Geta, but in reality, Caracalla had won so completely that there was almost no trace of his brother left. Now, normally, someone who seized power this violently would have ushered in a period of instability, civil war and strife, maybe even a civil war. But surprisingly, Caracalla didn't do any of those things. He ruled over the empire for the next 8 years with relative peace. He appointed competent governors, improved the infrastructure, and established law and order in cities throughout the empire. He also made himself very rich. He minted coins bearing his own image and likeness. He commissioned statues and monuments all throughout the empire. He lavished gifts on the populace and built public works projects. In fact, his public works projects were so ambitious that he is still remembered as one of the greatest builders in Roman history. He built aqueducts, sewer systems, roads, bridges, and public baths, and he expanded Rome itself. The city was surrounded by massive walls, and within the city, parks, gardens, and fountains dotted the landscape. And at the center of it all, the Colossus of Rome, a gigantic bronze statue of himself. He wanted to be remembered as a great emperor, and in many ways he was. He brought peace and prosperity to the empire, and he defended Rome's borders against barbarian invaders. And while his rule was harsh and unforgiving, it was also effective. Historians say that his reign marked the beginning of the 3rd century crisis, a period of decline for the Roman Empire, but it wasn't entirely his fault. In fact, most historians agree that Rome could have fared much worse during this period. And some believe that things were actually better under Caracalla than under his father or his brother. But regardless of what you think, he was certainly responsible for the deaths of many Romans. He was notorious for having enemies put to death without trial, and he personally delighted in torture. It was said that he enjoyed throwing gold coins from a tower just for the fun of watching common folk fight over the riches. And he was also responsible for some of Rome's worst economic policies. He instituted a poll tax, which required every free male Roman to pay a fee in order to vote. This was designed to keep poor people out of politics, but it ended up being extremely unpopular. To make matters worse, he devalued the Roman currency, which led to inflation and shortages of goods and services. This economic crisis contributed to the instability of the 3rd century and helped pave the way for Rome's eventual collapse. So you can see why some folks weren't big fans of his. But that doesn't mean that everybody hated him. Many Romans revered him as a great emperor and a champion of the people, and that's why it's so strange that he decided to kill his own brother. Most historians agree that the coup was a total surprise. There were no warning signs. No one saw it coming, not the senators, not the citizens, not even Julia Misa, the mother. But there are a few historians who disagree. Edward Champlin, author of the Roman Empire, a very short introduction, says that this version of events is totally false. According to Champlin, Caracalla didn't kill Geta because he was provoked. He had been planning this for months. What's your opinion? Do you think that Caracalla planned this? Or was he just tired of living under the rule of 2 emperors? You decide in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.